Please join me in welcoming Abdoulaye and Ibrahim.
My name is Abdoulaye, and I would like to thank Craig for inviting us, and thank you all for coming. And thanks to our guests who came here to support us from New York, from Guinea, and from Portland, Oregon. This is my brother Ibrahim, and we live in Portland, Oregon. So we're here to talk about ADLaM, a story that began almost more than 25 years ago. And we'll try to maybe see what we can say about it within maybe the next 30 or 40 minutes. So as you can see here, ADLaM is the name of the alphabet, and the PULAR and Fulfulde is the language. Next slide. So I just wanted to give some background information about Africa before we start talking about ADLaM. So this is the map of Africa. It's got a diverse population, all races and all religions, almost all of them. And it's got 6 of the top 12 fastest growing economies in the world. And it's got 500 million people who are subscribers to mobile services, and 250 million of those who use smartphones. There are more than 2,100 languages in Africa, and those are grouped into 5 groups. As you can see here, Afro-Asiatic, Saharian, Niger-Congo, Quezon, and Austronesian. And there are 54 countries in Africa, and Fulani, which is the language that we speak, and for which we created the ADLaM alphabet, is spoken in 23 countries of those 54 countries. And as you can see on the map here, you can see up there, you see it in the red, that's the Niger-Congo subgroup. And Fulani is up there between Guinea and Mali. Fulanis, there are more than 50 million of them in Africa. And you can, if we go to the next slide, so this is actually a map of Western and Central Africa. From Senegal up here where it says Fouta all the way to Sudan. These are the regions where you can actually find Fulanis in Africa. In almost all of the countries of West Africa, the 16 countries, plus some countries of Central Africa, and then as far as Sudan, around the Nile River. So you can find Fulanis. They are called Fulanis by the British, and they got that name from the Hausa people. And the French people refer to us as Pearl, and they got those names by the first tribe they encountered when they arrived in Africa, the Wolof people. But we call ourselves Pullo, if it's one, and Fulbe for many. And there are other names. The Arab people use Filara, and Fula is also a term used by the Mandingos. And there are also some other subgroups within the group of Fulani people, the Wadabe, the Bororo, the Wasulu people, and the Tukulor in Senegal. And we are historically nomadic people, and that's explains why we are spread all over Africa, because we are cattle herders, so wherever we find green pasture, that's where we take our cattle, and that's the reason why, one of the reasons, and why we extend it all over Western and Central Africa. And when we embraced Islam in the beginning of the 11th century, and then we started spreading Islam, and that also is the other reason that explains why we spread all over from the Senegal Delta all the way to Nigeria and Sudan. So this is the Fulani language. Like I mentioned earlier, there are 50 million, at least 50 million Fulanis in Africa and around the world at least. And we speak different dialects of the Fulani language. It's called Fulfulde. If you are on the eastern side of Africa, starting in Mali and all the way to Sudan, but it's called PULAR if you are in Senegal or Guinea or Sierra Leone area. Fulfulde, the reason why it's called Fulfulde in the other regions, basically Fulfulde means dialect in the Fulani language. So basically, the version of the PULAR that's spoken by the other people is just called dialects, and then that name stuck and the language actually is referred to now globally as Fulfulde. Most people know Fulfulde, and only a few people, except maybe people from French-speaking countries, refer to the language as PULAR. So as you can see here, it's part of the North Atlantic branch of the Niger-Congo as Wolof and Serer. And it's spoken at least in 24 countries. And it's recognized by the African Union as one of the official languages that will eventually be used in addition to English, French, Portuguese, Spanish, and then we'll have Swahili. And also in the ECOWAS, which is the Economic Community of West African States, has 16 countries that are members of that organizations. And Fulani is one of the languages that they're looking into, because basically in West Africa, we have 3 big languages that can serve to unite those countries. We have the Fulani language, we have the Hausa language, and the Mandingo language. And those are the transnational languages in West Africa, spoken in multiple countries. And originally, the Fulani language was written, as you remember I mentioned, the Fulanis embraced Islam in the early 11th century. And then we started using Arabic, the Arabic script, to write the Fulani language. And we used it all over, but there was no standard. So each region or each person or each group was writing the Fulani language based on their own understanding. Because the problem is that we have sounds that are specific to the Fulani language that are not existent in Arabic. So there was how to create the correspondence for the letters, the sounds that we have in Arabic that are non-existent there. And then the fact that the Arabs have some sounds that we don't need. So people were using some of those letters, in Arabic to as a correspondent to one of the sounds that are existing in our language, but it's not standardized. So every person was doing their own thing. And that explains the story of actually how this whole thing started that we'll get to later on. And then in the 70s, people started using the Latin alphabet. But also the problem with that is each country or each region was using their own standard. In Guinea, actually, during the first regime, they used to teach the national languages in Guinea, but we were using an alphabet that was different from any of the other countries, the Latin alphabet. For example, for the sound ba, we were using BH, while in other countries, they were using a sign that looks like a 6, the number 6. So there was a problem, also reading what's written in Guinea and versus what's written in Senegal or Mali, for example. And also one thing that I can say about the Fulani language is one of the most widely spoken languages in Guinea. It's actually the lingua franca in the central parts of Guinea, all the way to the region, the lowlands toward the ocean. And also in Cameroon, northern Cameroon, in the Adamawa region is the lingua franca. There's one of the most widely spoken language there. And the fact that there were these problems using different sets of letters to write the language is actually what will lead us to this. My dad lived in a region. Unfortunately, I don't have a map of Guinea, but in Guinea we have 4 natural regions, and the Fulani people live mostly in the mountain regions. But my dad moved from there to go and start a business in the forest region, which was about 800 kilometers away. So, and Fulanis being nomadic people, so that's how they spread all over. Even though they abandoned cattle herding, some of them did, but they're still engaged in other businesses by traveling to other regions and other countries. So the way people stayed in touch with their relatives is by sending letters to their relatives. And usually they would write it in Arabic, using the Arabic letters. And since there was no standard, there were only a few people who could actually read a letter for someone. So my dad was one of those people. He would, if people received letters from their relatives back in Fouta, they would send the letters to him so that he can read them. So that's how we got into reading those letters. We learned it from our dad. And then we got really good at it. And then at the end, he started giving us the letters to read for the people. But what we noticed is that, like I said earlier, there was no standard. So most of the time you were just guessing because you know the language. If you see something, a word, you can actually guess what the person was trying to write, even though, it's not exactly how you would think that they would write it. So that's how I got to asking my dad, how come, we don't have our own writing system so that we can write in a way that, everyone can read without having to guess, without having any problems. And he told us that we don't have a writing system. And then that's how I told him that, maybe that's something that we would, look into creating. And my mom also had a rice bar restaurant, a small restaurant next to the market, where I used to go hang out after school. And that's where I met this guy who had traveled a lot around West Africa, and he used to tell me a lot about the Fulani people. He's the one who first told me that the Fulanis are present all over, because I used to think Fulanis are only present in Guinea. But he said because we are present all over Africa, we speak different dialects, and we write differently. And then he said that people, they've been looking into unifying the languages, and then he started citing names of people, well-known peoples in the Fulani community. And he told me all of those people have looked into creating an alphabet so that they can unify the language but they have not been able to. So that combined with what happened with my dad really motivated me into looking into ways to creating an alphabet for our language. That's actually how the idea and the motivation came about. And then I was always with my brother. And then I talked to him about it, and then we started the process. And this is how it started. Sometimes after school, we'll go into our room, we start drawing lines, and then we'll pick whatever looks like a letter to us from those signs, as you can see here. Or the other method that we could use is that I would think of a letter or a sound, and then I would imagine how it would look like when it's written, and then I'll draw based on that. And that's how we ended up getting all the letters. We got 27, but later it will be 28 because we later discovered there's one more sound that we needed. So we added that later. But originally we had 27 letters. And then when we created all those letters, we told my dad that we finally created an alphabet, and he didn't believe us. So he called one of his relatives who used to work for the government, and then told that guy to come and, because his kids have informed him that they've created an alphabet, but he thinks they're just playing. So this guy came and then he started testing us. So he would ask me to leave the room, and then he would tell my brother to write a word using the new alphabet. And then my brother would write the word, and then I'll come and then I'll ask me to read it, and then I will read it, and it will be exactly what he asked. And then he did the same thing, he asked my brother to leave the room. My brother left, and then asked me to write something. He asked me to write one of the hardest words that he could think of in PULAR, which is silbadere. And then I wrote it, and then my brother came and read it, and then he turned to my dad, and he's like, I think these guys are onto something here. And basically that's how, the writing system started, the ADLaM. But back then it wasn't called ADLaM. And we created the alphabet. We started working on it. And then we started teaching. The first person that we taught was my sister. If you go on to the next slide. This is her, and this is one of the first books that we used. This is actually her writing back then. So this is how we started teaching people. We didn't have a name for the alphabet, and it was really hard, and we just kept calling it BINDI PULAR, which basically literally means the writing, the PULAR writing. And then we taught her, and after that we started going around to the market. The next slide, we started teaching in the community. And my dad used to own a shop in the market, and that's where we started, because there were many Fulanis in the market, so we would go there and teach. This is me and my brother. My brother is in the middle here, in the yellow and blue jacket. I'm in the back. And those are some of the few people that we taught then. And 2 years later, this is a picture after we had already created the alphabet. And then the next slide shows how the alphabet looked in the 1990s. This is how we used to write it. And when we created the alphabet, because we were heavily influenced by Arabic, we started from right to left. But also, since we are going to school, we are also influenced by the French, language. Instead of using diacritical marks as in Arabic to mark these vowels, we use actual vowels in our language, because our language is not the same as Arabic. Arabic only has 3 vowels, but we actually have 5 vowels as in English. Actually, we used to think we had 6, but it turns out we only had 5. So that's why we write from right to left. And then originally also all the letters were joined as in Arabic. So this is how we started writing it. And these are the first manuscripts. And then we started writing books. Basically what we were doing back then is the books that we were studying, either religious books or books from our schools. We would translate them into our language in PULAR and write them using the new alphabet. And these are the books that we'll then show to people. And then after that, because a few years later, since we had a lot of practice writing, so then we started writing this way, experimenting writing the letters separately, as you can see on the next slide. Then I started writing books with the letters not joined, actually. You can really tell here maybe because the image is not that good, but these letters are not joined, as you can see here, Winden Jangen. So we started experimenting that, and then we noticed that this actually was easier for people to read. So we continued on that, and then I'll let my brother talk about the next slide.
Like my brother said, we have many different phases of the evolution of ADLaM script. So the first one we call the first generation of book. We call this the first generation of book. As he said, it was just the book and the stories we used to learn from my dad and my mom. We used to write them and go around the city and teach people, and people really liked them. So by the time we move to the second generation of book, we started thinking about the language, about the structure, about the laws in the language. So we continue teaching people in the market, around the city. Every time when we come back from school and during our break, we used to teach people all the time. So by the second generation of book, we have a lot of different book. But the third generation of book started in 2000 when I moved to the University of Conakry in my country, in the capital city. When I moved there, I started an organization, because all the books from the first to the second generation, all of them was writing by my brother. I used to help him teaching around the city. So when I moved to the university, I started talking to some of my friends. They were really interested in teaching people, and they started working with us. From the university, we have 5 different groups. We have people going for medical school, the people going for engineering school. We have different projects. So we just write books that really affect the life of people. So when we started this kind of book, the script became very popular. So like this one, some of my students at the university who was going for medical school, they started writing books in our language, how a woman can take care of her kid since when she started her pregnancy into her kid is growing up. The kind of food you have to give them, how to take care of them, how to clean their clothes. So we started teaching people, and those books become very popular, and people was very happy to read, because more than 80% does not know how to read and write in English language back then, in French language in my country. So we also wrote many different books, how to clean water, because usually people take water from the well. So we give them teach them. Back then I was doing chemical engineering for my first 2 years at the university. So we learn the process and we develop a process and teach them and show them how to make those tools. So around the country. So after that, we started a newspaper. I started a newspaper in Guinea called Karambol, the Pen. So I used to write all the news all the time. And people, whenever people read, they use sometimes even to have tears, to cry, because they know now how to read and write. Also, we teach people how to have a basic math to take care of their business, because usually a lot of people put money together. They go to Asia, buy goods. When they come, they have to find someone who know how to read and write in French language to help them divide this stuff before they start selling them. So I teach them how to do that by themselves. We give them basic math, how to divide those stuff when they bring them from Asia or Morocco. So, and I started having problems with the government because I was teaching a lot of people, and also I was one of the leaders of the student movement at the university. I was the president of that movement. They call MIG, Mouvement des élèves et étudiants guinéens. So finally, I ended up going to prison for 3 months. So when I come out, I continue teaching, and I used to have a lot of issues after that. I went even to Senegal. I traveled to Senegal, continued teaching. Here I am at the University of Senegal with some of my friends who I taught back home, who moved also to Senegal. They have the same problem I had in Guinea, so they was looking to put them in jail. So they fled to Senegal. So I went back to see them there. We continued teaching. When I went to Senegal, what really struck me, I went to the market with some of these people. I found the book I was writing in Guinea already in the market with ladies. So I started talking to some of those ladies. They told me, "Can you read this?" I said, "Maybe, just a little bit." And one of them said, "I can teach you. I really like this book. It's really helping me." And I asked them, "How did you got this book?" They said, "So a lady is bringing the palm oil from Guinea. She is the one who brought those books here. She is the one who is teaching us. But right now, whenever someone takes something from me, I write down. I am following all my business with this, and it's really helping me. And I already started teaching people classes in the market, the other ladies." In 2007, I moved to the United States. When I come here, my biggest goal was to computerize the writing system. Because back in the days, we used to write everything by hand. It was very difficult. Whenever you have a mistake in one page, you're going to lose all that page. You have to write again. So before you print the books. So when I come here in 2007, I talked to some of my community members in New York. If they could help, we're going to have a software that can help us write in a computer. So when I come back to Portland, to see my brother, he figured out to find a company in Seattle that could done that. When we discussed with them, so we come back, we didn't have the money, so we have to work 7 months strict and save all the money, 100%, and make that software. We made that software, and we bought some computers. My brother in 2007 went to Guinea. In 2008, he went to Guinea. He brought some of those computers and teach people how to use them, how to write book, and how to edit them. So, but this font was on the Arabic code point. So we have a lot of problem using them, but it makes everything easier. And we was producing a lot of books, a lot of newspaper, and we bought a lot of computers. One of the guy in New York give many computers. We send it back home. We started an organization here called Winden Jangen. We bought computers. We send for the teachers, for the writers back home. So, but we still have challenges because we teach a lot of people, and internet is coming back home. Every villages they have cell phone everywhere, and people started calling us all the time. How can I write this? How can I text? I said, we don't have the solution right now, but we are doing some research on it. That's how I started learning the different process I discover in order to be in this system, I have to be in Unicode first. So this is people teaching back home. One of these guys who used to live in New York, he just moved back home in Africa to teach people. Because he has a master's degree in one of the Arab countries, Syria. So he come to New York, he went to school, he learned the English languages, and went back home. He said he's moving back just to teach people how to read and write. And they put him in contact with us. We taught him how to read and write the script, and he found this is the easiest way to teach people. The best way is in their language. He have taught many different people around Africa. So especially we focusing a lot in women because most of them don't go to school. And children who parent doesn't have the means to go to school, so we teach them at least how to read and write. And then we started newspapers. We call this newspaper Tabalde. Everything going around the country and Africa is monthly newspaper. It's still going out every year. And right now we have some of very outstanding brothers who have finished school. They went for law school and journalism. They are the one who are running this newspaper back home. But before I am the one who started it, I was writing everything. So now we have people doing this back home. So we're still working on the script and developing it and going forward. We have people writing biology book, physics, mathematics right now, the basic to teach people, to give them a little basic in their language so they can follow what's going on around the world. So, but when we made the software, I have some issues with the way the letters was. So I thought maybe to make this one very attractive, more beautiful, I have to take some calligraphy classes. So I took those calligraphy classes with, in the next slide, with these ladies called Rebecca. And the first day of the class, she used to ask every student, why are you here? So why are you taking calligraphy? So when she asked me, I told her really why I'm in that class. I said I am really interested in calligraphy to know some of the rules and to apply them into my writing system. So that's how we started working. She is the one who helped a lot. She is the one get me into different calligraphy conferences, and from those calligraphy conferences, we got help to be encoded in Unicode. So this is the different. I even have a font called After Her. I name one of these fonts. This one is called Rebecca in our fonts. We have this way of writing. So yeah, in the next slide.
So these are just different. Once you took the calligraphy classes, what you see in these slides is how the writing system evolved. Oh, sorry. So basically that's all. After he took the calligraphy classes, he started making many improvements. And actually what was in the first set of fonts that we created, that was developed for us in Seattle, is very different, to what we see today.
Oh, excuse me. So it's still being written from right?
Yeah.
Yes, it's still
right
yes,
in the left.
Yes.
Okay.
And then it's also from this, after he took this class, then we started thinking of creating not only, because originally we only have one set, it's right to left, and it didn't have lower or uppercase very present in the writing system. But after he took the calligraphy classes, he saw all the different styles that we can do with the ADLaM and the improvement that can be made, and also the necessity of having it, how important it is, for writing, proper names. So then he created another set just for the uppercase for ADLaM. So this is just showing all the different designs that he's done with the letters.
Next one.
Yeah.
Okay. So as I told you, in 2014, I was invited to give a talk at the International Calligraphy Conferences in Colorado Springs. From that conference, we had a help from some of the people there who helped us.
Just one thing before he started talking about the thing. You remember how I told you when we created the alphabet, we couldn't come up with a name. So imagine since the 1990s all the way till 2012, we didn't have a name. We actually experimented or thought about different names on how to call the alphabet. Whenever people ask us what's the name of the alphabet, we just call BINDI PULAR, which is writing system. Or people would call it the writing system that came from Zerokore, which is our hometown where we were born. But one day, because the alphabet became so popular in Guinea, so the instructors there gathered one day and they said, we have to give this alphabet a name. And they found a very simple thing. It's unbelievable, because they just took the first 4 letters of the alphabet and called it. And we couldn't believe that we could even think of that. As simple as that. They call it ADLaM, ADLaM, and they gave it a perfect definition, which is the alphabet that will prevent the people from disappearing. Because that was one of the things that most African languages are confronted with. There's French language in Africa, which is actually in Guinea, that's the official language, the language of instruction. But in our homes, we speak our own languages. In the markets, we speak our own languages. But if you go to school, you learn French. And the government, everything is done in French. So there's, our languages are threatened by the French language or English language, or Arabic language also. So that's why, it made perfect sense for the alphabet to be a way to protect our language from disappearing. Because if the language is really, the vehicle of culture, like we say, because if your language dies, your culture dies with it, because there are certain things that are specific to cultures that can only be shared with codes or words in that culture. So if you lose that language, that means the culture is eventually called, to disappear. And if the culture disappears, that means the people, not the physical people, but the people as in their culture, civilization, and their history, all of that goes with it. So they came up with the name ADLaM, and it was perfect. It's like we couldn't believe it, and it was perfect timing because we were about to start the process with Unicode, and it would have been awkward for us to submit a proposal and not even have a name for the alphabet. So when I moved here, I started contacting Unicode, and everything. Most of you know that probably is, things move faster or quickly when you have contacts. But if you don't have contacts, usually things don't move as fast as you hope. So when I moved in 2004, when I started researching on how to get our alphabet encoded, I discovered that there was a UNESCO project, UNESCO-funded project, working with the University of Berkeley in trying to encode some languages. So I wrote to them, but never heard from them. In 2007, when my brother moved here, we also wrote to them, and they replied back. We started talking a little bit, but it didn't get far. It's until until it's not only when my brother went to Colorado at his second calligraphy conference, that's when things started going forward, moving fast, because that's where he met some guy. At his first conference, actually, there was a conference in Portland where he met with Randy, right?
Yeah, Randy.
And then when he went to the second conference in Colorado, Randy introduced him to somebody called Stephen Rapp, I believe. And this is the guy who said that he knows somebody working on the Unicode project that can help us. And then he sent an email, I think, to, what's her name? I forgot. Debbie Anderson, yes. And it turns out it's the same person that I had emailed previously, but I didn't get far with her. But with Stephen Rapp's help, things got really moving quickly, and then they put us in touch with, so this is Randy, the guy who introduced us to Stephen Rapp, who helped us get all of this stuff moving. And then when we talked to Debbie Anderson, so he said there's one person who could help us write the proposal, which is Michael Everson. He's written many proposals for many African languages, and he's the one who did our proposal. And then he came to Vancouver and Washington, which is very close to Portland where we live, and then we met with him there. And then we worked on all the different styles, and he asked us all the questions that he needed, and then he wrote the proposal. And in 2013, everything went really fast, after Stephen Rapp got involved. So in November, he already had a preliminary proposal, and then he was invited in New York. We had a convention, an ADLaM convention there, and then he came there, he met with a lot of the people who are involved in helping ADLaM, because this thing, ADLaM, if it is where it is today, is really with the help of the people in New York. There are many people there who understand, the importance of this alphabet. Some of them did not go to French school, because that's the problem that we have usually in Guinea. If you didn't go to French school or an English school, you are called an illiterate person, even though you are valuable, you might know certain things. So these people, ADLaM has been a way to bring those people into the fold, or at least to get them to share what they know or to contribute in terms of knowledge, because they have knowledge, they have things that they want to do for the community, but without ADLaM, they could not have been able to do it. And they're the reason why actually ADLaM has gotten, because with the few means, they don't have a lot, but whatever they have, they invest a lot of it into ADLaM in trying to make it move forward. And the first guy that my brother showed you here, Djallon Barry in the slide teaching, he used to live in New York here. They're the ones actually who helped send that guy across West Africa. That guy, a few years ago, he took a tour. That's how actually ADLaM spread in all these countries, and people learned about it because he took a tour. He went to Mali, Burkina Faso, Ghana, Benin, all the way to Nigeria to teach people. And wherever he went, he left a mark. And eventually, that's what will take off. And you will see later in the slides that today ADLaM is taught everywhere. Across West Africa. So in May 2014, we received the first ADLaM chart, the codes, and we were very excited, but there were revisions that needed to be done, and we were invited to come down to, they had a technical meeting in October of 2014, so we drove down here, and then asked us all the questions, and then, we were told, at least we were given the hope that ADLaM will eventually be encoded. We were hoping for the next year in 2015, but it didn't happen because we had everything hanging on to that. Like my brother was saying, people write us asking us, when will I be able to text? When will I be able to go online and just use ADLaM? And we know that's not possible without Unicode. But once that happened, so we were hoping it was going to happen in 2015, but unfortunately it didn't happen. It happened with Unicode 9.0, and we were very happy, and ever since then, that's where we met some of the people. We met Rusbe, is that his name, I think? Rusbe, yes. Yeah, so, and we established some contact with him there, and then they started working on the font, the Noto font for us. And but after that, in May, that's when we got notified that ADLaM has been approved for the release in Unicode 9.0. So that was a huge thing for us. Yes.
When you guys were very young,
yes,
Can I ask, how old were you when you developed it?
Between 10 and 11, and my brother was around 14.
Okay, so that paves the way for my next question. I've been working on a project for spelling reform for Brazil. It's a similar situation. A lot of people can't read or write, and the system for writing down Portuguese, it doesn't correspond well. The alphabet isn't very well suited to the pronunciation system.
Okay.
So I really appreciate what you did as children. But one of the difficulties that I faced in trying to propose a spelling reform for Brazilian Portuguese is how phonetic versus how phonemic do you want your language to be? So obviously I don't speak your language, but an example in English would be the word better. So that sound in better, no word starts with that sound. It's not really a T. We don't say better. And it's not a D. We don't say better, like in David, better. It's some intermediate sound that only exists between a stressed syllable and an unstressed syllable. That's why we say photo, but we say photographer. We don't say photographer. So this is like a really subtle thing for, I would imagine, someone who's 11 years old to appreciate that. So, but you have to teach the language to other people. So is this alphabet, is it very phonetic? Is it really the way you pronounce it? Or is it more abstract? Like you use a symbol that maybe some people will pronounce it one way in one situation. Maybe they'll pronounce it another way in another context. Maybe someone in one region will pronounce the symbol one way. Maybe someone in another region will pronounce it another way, like better in London or better. Right.
Yeah.
How closely phonetic is this alphabet?
It's very phonetic, actually. That's actually the thing that makes it easy, because we say the difference between the ADLaM alphabet for the Fulani language and English, and the Latin alphabet for the English language is actually we write what we say. It's exactly the way we pronounce it, that's how we write it. There is no sound there that can be tweaked, or it's very phonetic, basically. If it's da, you see written da, it's going to be da, whether it's in Guinea or whether it's in RCA in the Central African Republic, CAR, or Sudan.
That's great. That reminds me of a quote by, I think it was Joseph Priestley, the discoverer of oxygen and inventor of carbonated beverages, said the only true and just representation for a language is its spoken form.
Yes.
Great.
Thank you. Great question. Yeah. So if you, if you have questions, you can feel free to stop us. So the next thing that we will just talk about, if you keep going. These are the projects. After ADLaM has been encoded, one of the things that we started working on with Roosbe, or at least he introduced us, he connected us, was the Nodo font, trying to get a Nodo font for ADLaM. This has been done finally, and we're still working on to make, at least suggest some changes to it. And then we're also looking into ways to create additional fonts that really reflect how, because the problem that we have with the Nodo font is that since we were not here to work with those people who developed or designed the font for us, so we couldn't make the changes as they were creating the font. So basically we gave them a sheet of paper where the letters were written, and then they created the font from that, and then we saw the final product. But the first font, for example, we created in Seattle, we were actually working directly with those people, and we were heavily involved. So we made all the changes that we need. So that's why we're looking into making font. And Craig has been helping us a lot tremendously. He created some really cool stuff for us, tools that we are able to use, even to convert from the Arabic, the font that was based on the Arabic code points to the new ADLaM code points. And then the other thing that we were looking into, because you saw how the Fulani people are spread from Senegal all the way to Sudan. We're looking into creating a platform, an online platform where people can learn the alphabet. Because right now, the way people learn is actually through the apps. WhatsApp, what's the other one?
Telegram.
Telegram and Facebook. We have many groups on Facebook, many groups on WhatsApp, and many groups on Telegram where people actually learn. So we want to actually convert that into an online platform where people can actually learn the alphabet, because there are too many limitations with WhatsApp or Telegram. And the other thing that people do usually is they take a picture And if they want to send us a message, they'll write it with their hands and then take a picture of it and then send it to us, because right now we can't really type in any of the instant messaging applications. You can type using the ADLaM. And so we want to create applications for learning and communication. And then the other big project that we have is the annual convention that happens in Guinea now every year. Eventually that will move to other countries. So the people, all of the people who are involved in ADLaM from all of the countries in Africa and around the world, whether it's here in America or Europe, they gather every year in one place, in one location. It just happened in December. So this year again, it will happen in December in Guinea. People will meet there and then talk about all the progress that's been made and all the projects that we're trying to implement and all the exchange ideas and discoveries in ADLaM. So we're actually inviting Craig to, if it's possible, to attend to the one that will be held in Guinea the end of this year. So the next slides will just show the pictures of ADLaM being taught in the different countries, whether it's in Guinea, if you can just keep scrolling, and so this is Nigeria and the country of Niger. Same. Nigeria. This is Benin and Togo. This is in Sierra Leone. And this is Guinea. Fouta, Djallon is a region of Guinea. This is a graduation in all girls school. Same. This is all in Guinea as well. Cameroon is actually one of the most dynamic places for ADLaM right now, and a lot of involvement, new people who've been working already on the Fulani language who are getting now involved with ADLaM, and they will actually be attending. Harvard is organizing a conference because Conakry is being chosen as the book capital of the world, and from April 21st to April 23rd, they will be having a conference there, and they've invited people who are involved in ADLaM from Cameroon, Nigeria, and Senegal, who will be attending there to make presentations as well. So some of the challenges that we face, I mentioned some of them is how to get ADLaM into smartphones. I was saying earlier, we have at least 250 million users of smartphones in Africa. And the thing is, because Africa started late, so we are more into mobile devices than we are into the older technologies. So if we really want to get ADLaM to touch everyone, because smartphones are being used even in the remote villages. So we need to have ADLaM into smartphones and computers, and especially with all the different platforms that exist, Android, Windows, and iOS. And one of the challenges that we have is most of the people, we do have some people today that work on ADLaM as full-time, they make it as their full-time activity or job. But because right now, since we are the ones who started the ADLaM, the project, and my brother has done a lot of research in the language. So usually when people write books, they have to send it to him to review or edit them, and that takes a lot of time. So if you're doing this as a side job or as a hobby, so it's not going to really work. That's why we have a backlog of at least 23 books so far that have not been reviewed or edited for publishing. And so that's why we have materials and publication issues, and that also comes with funding. And this is an example of the messages that people will send us. They write a message and take a picture of it and send it because they cannot share.
When you review the books,
When you review the books, do you standardize them? Because you showed the map of how dispersed you're nomadic people, you're dispersed all over Africa. So naturally, we would expect major dialectal differences. So do you standardize the spelling to, for instance, your dialect? How do you decide how to standardize it?
Well, that's one of the amazing things about ADLaM, because as you said, we have Fulfulde being spoken across, thousands of miles. And what ADLaM has helped us is standardize the language. Because right now, originally at the beginning, when we would talk to someone who is from Nigeria, we would have difficulties communicating with them because they speak in a different dialect. But now all the people who are learning ADLaM or who are involved in the ADLaM program, we all understand each other. So usually when we edit the language, we are not only using one dialect, because the reason why we have so many different dialects is also because we are so mobile, we are nomadic people. So wherever we go, based on the environment and the people who are there, we will borrow new words from that community and add it to the Fulani language. But what we are doing right now is the standardization just means going back to the original, because we all speak the same language. Structure-wise, it's all the same. It's just the words that are usually different. So we usually, if for example, something is called in Guinea in a certain way and it's called in a different way in Nigeria, we just find the way it's called in Fulani originally and then we'll use that. That's one way we use it. And then,
we also working, we already collected more than 75,000 words. So we're working on the orthography of those words. And from those words, I am planning to produce a dictionary, Fulani dictionary. So as he said, ADLaM have already helped the language to be standardized because they all using the same books. And I can say 99 of the book come through me before you go out. Yeah. So I am editing all the book. So all the people learning from those books are learning the same language.
So what do you do if in one region they pronounce a word, I'm going to make up a word, I don't know if this is a word in your language. One region they say pula, but in another region they say pura, like with an R, and then somewhere else they say it with an L, or in one region they say something with a B, and in another region they say it with a V. How do you decide which region to favor?
Like my brother said, most of the time we don't have that kind of problem of pronunciation. Usually we have, in Guinea sometime, before we didn't know how we call police. We only call in French. But there was another dialect of the Fulani who has the word. We actually use that word and explain people this is how we call police. Before I started traveling around Africa doing research on the language, in Guinea we already have lost the name of the 7 days in our language. We used to call them in Arabic. Yeah. So in my traveling, I saw one of the group of Fulani who still have the 7 days of the days of the week in the Fulani language. And I used that one in all the book, in all the newspaper, and right now I can say most of the Fulani in Guinea are using that one instead of the Arabic one. Yeah. That's how we are working. And people really like the idea using whatever we have in the language, not to borrow that one.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you. Yeah, thank you. And the other thing that is, even though Fulani was written in Arabic, many years, and everyone was just writing based on their own understanding, so there was no standard. But what ADLaM is doing is helping with that. So if you've written something, and since the environment also informed in many ways how people say certain things, or how words are added to the language. For example, if there are certain trees that exist in Guinea that don't exist in Cameroon, but the Cameroonians know of that tree only through reading French books, so probably they call that in French. But since the tree is in Guinea, we'll just use the name that's used in Guinea for that tree, so the Cameroonian Fulanis don't have to use the French word anymore. So that's how we do it. So basically, at a basic level, the language is the same, but it's just the borrowed words or the environment that's creating some of the differences. And also there are some changes because, where the Fulanis are a very tiny minority or where the language has been heavily influenced by people who actually learned it, but who were not originally Fulanis, like in certain areas of Cameroon. If the structure has changed a little bit, we can actually tell when we see it written. So we'll just correct, the grammar or how, because people usually write the way they speak. And usually the way you speak is not necessarily the way it should be. So those are the corrections that we usually do. And people understand them because most of the time it makes sense. So I don't know if anybody has questions. So let's see, next slides. So what are the other thing that been happening in Africa right now is a lot of people have notice the limitations of teaching people in English, French, or Arabic. Because like I said earlier, if you go to your house, you speak in PULAR, you go to the market, you speak PULAR, but the only time you hear French is when you go to school, or the only time you will start learning French is actually the first day you sent to school. That created a lot of limitations, and policymakers have been looking into ways to bring in our local languages, at least as a way of teaching kids in primary school. There have been some pilot programs being done either in Senegal or Cameroon. And eventually, what that means, especially with ECOWAS and the African Union already choosing certain languages, transnational languages, is that one day, Fulani will be spoken not just by the Fulanis, but by more people in West Africa, for example. So right now, if there are 50 million speaking Fulani, eventually there could be 100 or more than 150 million people speaking, because the language will be adopted, and the language is a language of the community there. People, we know each other. So it would be easier to teach somebody in PULAR or Fulfulde than to teach someone in English, which is a language that he's not familiar with. So maybe instead of doing instruction learning in French, we will actually learn French, but we'll do the learning in Fulfulde or Mandingo or Hausa, for example. So also the other thing that's great with ADLaM is that since ADLaM is spreading a lot in Nigeria, we have a huge Fulani community there. The Hausas are also, some Hausas are looking into adapting, the ADLaM alphabet to write their own language also. And the director of the African Languages program at Harvard has also expressed interest in using ADLaM to write the Swahili language, because he learned that Swahili and the Fulfulde are both non-tonal languages. Because he's already looking into another script that's used in Africa for Kikuyu, which is a tonal language, but Fulani is not a tonal language, so he thinks that ADLaM will be more appropriate for that. So he's looking into that, and he'll be at the conference in Conakry. So there's also a huge presence. If you go on Facebook, you look up Fulani groups, you'll see hundreds of them. We are very active on social media, and many groups, and promoting not only ADLaM but other aspects of the Fulani culture. And there are many movements, supporting the ADLaM, especially in Nigeria, in Guinea and Cameroon. And so if you go on social media, because Nigeria is the biggest country in Africa, it's like more than 180 million people. And if you get at least even 10% of those to get involved in something, it creates a huge impact. And that's what's happened with ADLaM, because since Nigeria got involved, it's gotten really big, whether it's online or on the ground. And so they've opened, the way things are so big there is that sometimes when they're doing a graduation at ADLaM, they actually do it at stadiums, which is very different from Guinea, because Guinea is a small country for only 12 million people compared to Nigeria. So this is where we stand today, and I don't know if there's anything else left. So yeah, these are pictures of graduations, but we have so many pictures but we didn't want to turn the presentation into just a slideshow of pictures. But if you go on Facebook, you do #ADLaM, you might see a lot of stuff or if you go online. We're actually creating websites where we will collect all of this stuff and put it there so for people to know what's going on ADLaM today. So thank you all for listening, and thank you for coming. And if you guys have any questions, we'll feel free. We actually wanted to do only 30 minutes presentation and 30-minute questions, but so many things to talk about. But yeah, thank you so much. Thank you.
So you'd be happy to take questions?
Yeah.
And my question was about sorting your alphabet. So how, when you made your alphabet, how did you decide how you sold? Like in Arabic, you have Aleph, Bet, Jim, but you went with Aleph, Dal, Dali, Mim.
Lam,
so
Mim, yes.
How did you decide that?
I think the most obvious was the way we came with the letters. So sometimes, we would just make signs, and then when we pick a letter from those signs, we'll decide to call that a name, give it a name, and that's how we actually organize the alphabet. Or if I think of a letter, or for example, I had a friend, when I would go to class, I would start writing things to share with him. And then if I start writing something and I'm blocked, stop somewhere because I don't have that letter. So that day, if I go home, that's the letter I'll be creating. So then I'll add it to the list. And that's how we completed the list. And we never really, after we completed the set, the 27, we really never went back and changed the order. So basically we made the list as we created the letters. But originally we wanted the R wanted to be the first letter we created, of course, because it was the first letter of my name anyway, so so I wanted it to be, the first letter. And it's the first letter in every other alphabet almost.
I have kind of a related question. I was kind of struck by how much attention there was to the aesthetics of it. Like, you started out with this sort of automatic writing and visualization, and then you kind of talked about some of these decisions, like, do we join letters or do we split them up? And then you go into these calligraphy classes to really kind of polish it. So I guess I'd just like to know sort of anything you want to say about that real attention to appearance. What your kind of overall strategy is, like how you think that maybe has been beneficial for adoption and reception of the language. I mean, it's, clearly ADLaM is successful, and as you've said, there have been other efforts to do this. So I'm wondering if the aesthetic attention there is part of that.
Yes, it has always been, and when we first created the alphabet, and the more we wrote books, the more we realized we can refine the letters. And that's how you saw the evolution from how we were writing all of them joined, and then we went to unjoined letters. And also what we noticed is that the better the letters look to people, the more interested they are to the alphabet. Because the colonization has had a huge impact on us, and sometimes it's hard for us to look into things that come from our own culture as very valuable, because basically for colonization to succeed, you have to basically make people think that they're not that valuable. They have to take everything from you, the language, the culture. So that mentality still exists in our community. So aesthetics played a lot of part of it. And like my brother said, when we created the first keyboard, and then we started typing with it, he realized that it didn't look as good as he wanted, and that's how he got interested into calligraphy. And he's been making amazing stuff with it, and some of it looks, if you took what we wrote like in 1990, you compare to what's coming out today from some of the stuff that he's developing, looks very different, and it looks way better. And yeah, aesthetics is. Especially in our culture, if you go on YouTube, go look up the Wadabe, you will see how Wadabe people, W-O-D-A-A-B-E, look that up on YouTube, you'll see how beauty is important in the Fulani culture. And so
I was wondering what you do about other symbols like punctuation. Do you have commas, dashes, parentheses, stuff like that in your system, or do you have regular, Latin or Arabic punctuation?
So since the writing goes from right to left, we use many of the Arabic punctuations, and we do have some different ones because the Fulani language is. So my brother is actually the one who came up with that. When we are talking, sometimes you say an affirmative sentence. If it's written, it's not a question, but it's only a question by how it sounds. So that's how we came up with different symbols to indicate whether a sentence is actually a question before you start reading it, so you will know how to change your tone.
Yeah, okay. So that's also part of your writing system is some of this additional punctuation you need. Thank you.
I was wondering how you typically represent numbers in the script. Do you use the Latin digits, ASCII digits 1, 2, 3? Do you use Arabic, or do you have your own digits? And did you usually use a base 10 numbering system, or do you use something else?
Yeah. So we have our own set of digits, the 10 digits from 1 to 0. We don't use the Latin or the Arabic because basically the problem with also is since the writing system goes from right to left, and the way we read numbers is also from right to left. So we created also the digits to represent numbers that also go from right to left as well. So if you write in 1996, for example, it will go. If somebody is reading, it will be like 6,991 if it's in Latin or Arabic. So we have our own set of digits. And also the thing with ADLaM is that since it's people view it as original. You know, when we first created this, it was just a way for us to maybe solve a problem of standardization. But now it has become something bigger, you know, as a way actually to educate more people. Because like my brother said, we have a huge percentage of people that don't go to school in Guinea or everywhere in Africa. But that's because education is not done in our languages, it's done in foreign languages. So basically, if you don't know how to speak French or English or Arabic, you are considered an illiterate person. So in newspaper, you will not have access to it, or information given on the radio, you will not have access to that as well. And one of the most amazing things or the most fulfilling thing for me is when my mom came here to visit a few years ago in 2012. And, you know, this area is very different from Africa. In Africa, we live in communities where everybody is outside. But here, what was very different for her is that the fact that everyone lives inside. When you go in your house, you lock your door, and you don't, you know. So it was very hard for her. So if we go to work, she would spend all her day at home, not have anything to do. So the only way for her, she's never been to a French school or English school, so she doesn't know how to read or write in English or French. So the only way she can pass her time all day was reading, you know, the ADLaM newspapers. And one day she said, yeah, and books. And she said she did not realize how lost she was, because now she can read the newspaper and know what's going on around the world. And that was really amazing for me. It had a huge impact. Like, even if it was just left to this, if this was what it was achieved with ADLaM, I'm satisfied.
One of my models for success in a language is that people are able to use it for everyday things, and texting is one of those things. If ADLaM were available on mobile devices, would young people be texting their friends, lying to their parents about where they're going after school, things like that?
Yes, absolutely. Because like I said, you know, people want to use ADLaM so bad, so even to text, they'll just, you know, write it on a piece of paper and take a picture of that and then send it, just because they want to text in ADLaM. And like we said, you know, most people don't go to French or English school, so it's easier for them to just text in their own language. And if ADLaM is the thing they know, and it's also people feel more comfortable writing in full day using ADLaM than actually writing it using another alphabet. Because if somebody texts you or writes something, make a comment on Facebook in PULAR or full day using the Latin script, it's an exercise to actually figure out what's written there, because nobody goes to school, you know, most people don't go to school and learn how to write in PULAR using the Latin alphabet. And since, you know, that question about phonetics, since ADLaM is very phonetic, so the way you read it is the way, or the way you say is the way you write, so the chance of making mistakes is very, you know, very slim.
And like I said at the beginning, smartphones are everywhere, but the only thing people do with their smartphone is just calling and receiving. And now they know they can read and write in their language, but they cannot do the other functions. They cannot write the name and save. Most of the time, most of the people I have met who didn't go to school, they just memorize numbers with the people they really know. They don't save names. Or they have a notebook, they write. But if ADLaM is in the system, they can write their name, save their schedules. It's going to be amazing.
And the other thing is also economics of it, because it's cheaper to text than to call, you know. So people prefer to send text messages. And like I said, we are nomadic people, and even though we don't follow cattle everywhere now, but it's basically in our blood. Fulani people travel. It's very rare to see a Fulani person who's living in a region where he was born. Yeah. And for that reason, you know, people are always communicating, figuring out ways to communicate with each other. And texting is one of the most amazing ways people can text. So there are Fulanis everywhere in the world. So you can go to a city, big city, where you will not find a Fulani. And there's actually a saying in our culture or in Africa, if you go to a place and you see no Fulani there, move. Because that place is not good.
The other tribes say that, like the Mandingo.
Yeah. So we travel a lot, and we need to communicate. We need to stay in contact because we were the only few people also that used. It was part of our culture to write letters and go to the market or to a park and give it to some random person and say, I have one of my relatives that live in a city called Lola, and I don't know exactly where he lives, so I give him the letter, and then the person will take it and then go looking for a certain Mamadou Djallon from Mamum until they find him and give him the letter, and then he'll take that letter to somebody who will read it. So yeah, communication, texting, if we were able to text, that will make a huge difference for ADLaM and for the people.
I would love to thank our speakers and our honored guests from around the world, and all of the Google people, and all of you people who will be seeing this later on Talks at Google.
Have a good afternoon. Thank you.